Hey everyone, Coradine team here, ready to go through our Customizing LogTen Pro for Students and CFIs live stream. Really happy to have you all here. Please let us know where you're coming in from in the chat. And also if you have any questions, obviously throughout the live stream, please also put that in the chat. And welcome to everybody who's watching this after the live stream as well. We will be recording this and it'll go up on YouTube directly after the live stream ends. We're hoping to be about 30 to 45 minutes here, and we've got our team, Heather, Thomas, and David here with us. Yeah, make sure you let us know where you're coming in from, and like I said, ask questions in the chat as they come to you, and we'll try to cover them off either during the live stream or at the end. We're aiming for, like I said, 30 to 45 minutes. And I'll just pass on to David to introduce himself. You're on mute. Sorry, David.
You would think this is our first one. Hello, everyone. David here, speaking to you all the way from a very rainy Northern Ireland. Commercial pilot myself, been with Coradine for well over a year now. Some of you might know me from doing support. It's good to see some familiar names in the chat box. So for those of you joining again, welcome back. For those of you that's the first time joining us, welcome as well. We hope that you make the most of it and then you enjoy it.
Hey everyone, I'm Thomas, and I am also on the support team here at Coradine, and I've been with the company for about 5 years. I've been working in airline operations prior to that for Virgin America and Horizon Air, and happy to see everybody here.
Hey everybody, welcome. My name's Heather. I'm the VP of Service and Operations for Coradine. I am a general aviation pilot with the instrument rating, and I love everything that has to do with aviation and the aviation community. We're super happy to have you all join. Paul, everybody okay if I dive right in, or was there anything else?
No, fire away, Heather. I'll put your, here we go. There's your iPad up on screen. Fire away.
Excellent. All right, to get everybody started, we're going to demonstrate some information within typical roles and what that entails. You may have remembered or noticed the first time you downloaded and opened up LogTen Pro, it asks you to choose a typical role. And an example of those can be found by tapping on, and this is iOS demonstration, we'll also do this on Mac as well to follow along. So the More tab in the bottom right-hand corner, and then in Settings, we're going to look at the My Logbook option, and typical role over here includes everything from airline captain, first officer, commercial flight attendant, GA, and then you've got instructor, CFI. There's a military option and a student. The focus of this webinar is going to be for instructor and student. But if you wanted to change your typical role for any reason, this is where you would find that. There's a certain preset fields that are displayed based off of the typical role that you choose. And it's a great way to get you off the ground and logging flights right away, but it's also customizable. So for the instructor typical role, for example, it will automatically display hobs out, hobs in, dual given, and then some of these fields will also automatically pre-fill based off of that typical role. More specific information about each of these roles and what they include can be found in our knowledge base article that Paul can paste into our chat. So you'll be able to see each of the specific fields that are included, as well as any particular fields that might be set up to auto-populate or pre-fill. If, for example, you did choose a typical role and there were some additional fields that you wanted to add or hide, you can do that from within the Logbook tab. If you tap on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, you can tap further on Configure Fields. And now you'll see for each of these sections, we've got flight, time, duty, crew, landings, operations, passengers, notes. At the bottom of each of these fields, you'll now see a new Configure section option. So let's say as a CFI for the flight section, we also want to see let's say the entry type. Maybe we're going to be doing some simulator lessons and we want to be able to distinguish the entries between actual flights or simulator. And let's say we also want to see the route field. So tapping on any of these toggles to show them as green will make them visible. If you wanted to hide any fields, if you didn't need them while you're entering data, you can also deselect the toggles. And do keep in mind that any data or information you have in any of these fields will always remain in the background regardless if they're visible or not. So if we tap outside of configure fields, we will now see that entry type and route has shown up. The route has automatically populated between the from and to locations, but perhaps say that it didn't for any reason, or if there's any other field that you want to change the order of the fields within the flights, you can also do that by tapping and dragging on the = sign to the far right of any of these fields while you're in configuration mode. So I'm going to tap and drag the route field, and you can see you can place it anywhere within this flight section, and the same goes for the other sections as well. So for now, route is exactly where I want it to be, right between from and to, similar to how you'd log it in a paper logbook. And I'm going to hand this over to David to demonstrate how you can do this on Mac.
Thanks, Heather. So without getting into typical roles again as such, on your Mac, you would simply have to go at the very top of your screen. You will see a list of menus here. So if you click on LogTen Pro and then scroll down to Preferences, you will see that you get a new dialog with just a few different tabs that display, that concern different areas of the logbook. So if you go to the General tab, you will be able to see at the very top the typical role setting. Similarly to in iOS, you'll just click on the menu and then you will you can select from any of these different available typical roles. In this case, differently to Heather, I've got it set as student because it's the most relevant to me for this presentation. So you will be able to change it here similarly to in iOS. To make the other fields visible in your Mac, then you will have to go to each of the tabs that concern that field. So, you know, if you go to flight, you will have all the, for example, you want to log the out and in times, then you can make them visible here. You can make more people available. To keep it with the same example that Heather used there, let's say that we want to see the entry type because we've logged a simulator and we want to see the route. So in this case, you would just click it. In this case, it's a checkbox. So you would click the entry type and then the route. You will see that straight away. They've already appeared here on the right-hand side, but they will have also appeared at the very, very end of your logbook grid view here. On the Mac as well, you're able to move these. So let's say that you wanted the entry type at the very, very beginning because you want to be able to see straight away whether it's a flight, a simulator. So you can just go to the top of the column and then grab it and then just drag it to whichever way, whatever you want. In this case, we said at the very beginning. So I'm going to drag it here to the very beginning. Before I let go, if you see on the right-hand side at the detail view, when I drop it, you'll see that everything rearranges here at the same time. So now in this case, it is not only possible to choose what data is displayed and in what order and how it's displayed, but it's also possible to choose how to format this data, how you wanted that data to be displayed. So for that, I'm going to pass it back to Heather to show her iPad.
Awesome. Thank you, David. All right, so you've got your fields all set up and configured, and then they're in the order that you'd like to see them. Let's say that you're now looking at the way that your time is displayed. Right now it's set to hours with decimal tenths. Maybe perhaps you want to change that to see hours and minutes. Those further configuration options are available, again, in bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to tap on the More tab, and then that's going to take us to this More overview. These options are within Settings, and then Display Options is where you're going to find time format and a couple of others that are going to be useful for you to make sure everything looks how you want it to look. So here you can see hours decimal. There's an option also to show hundredths. which is going to be a more accurate depiction. There's not going to be any rounding involved in that, so keep that in mind. You can also change it. Here's the hours and minutes option. Now, if we go back to the radar, it's going to show 9:70 and 12 minutes. A couple of other display options that are quite common and popular to know about would be to either use Zulu U2C time for all of your dates and times. If you deselect the U2C time zone, it'll default to local. Further within those options, you can set it to a particular time zone if you want. That's on the lower end of popularity, but it's an option if you need it. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to Zulu default. Turn that toggle back on. There's some cosmetic settings here, application icon, lat long format you can change as well. For the purpose of reports or just for your own viewing ease, you can change places from ICAO to IATA, name or identifier. You can change the way the aircraft information is displayed, either aircraft ID primary or secondary. There's also an option to display a person's name or ID. Again, changing any of these settings is just going to change the output of information that you see. It's not going to change any of the data that you've already entered. One quick thing I'm going to demonstrate also for easy reference, it's a tip and trick. If we notice here in our logbook, there's quite a large number of flights. And let's say, for example, that you wanted to review earliest flights or maybe even a particular year. Rather than scrolling through up and down all the time, you can turn on this show date index toggle. It really comes in handy and it's really useful. And now back in the logbook tab, you'll see that each of the years are indexed over to the right-hand side of the list, the flight list view. So if we wanted to go all the way back to 2015, the beginning of the logbook, we can do that with just a tap. We can navigate to the center of the logbook as well by tapping on any of those years. And now I'm going to pass this back over to David to demonstrate on Mac. David, back over to you.
Thanks, Heather. So exactly the same as iOS, just in a different menu, you're able to configure all of those things on your Mac as well. So if we go back to the same menu where we were before, so LogTen Pro, Preferences, and then this time we'll want the General tab, then you'll see that there's quite a few, all of the configuration settings that you had on iOS. So you've got the flight time format that you can select. You'll see similarly, if you select the decimal, then that's when you can choose to show the 2 decimal places. You can see here in the background that as soon as I change it, everything changes automatically. You can change your Zulu time here. So if you untick the Zulu, then similarly, you get a list organized by continents where you can choose whatever time zone is relevant to you. For now, we're just going to put it back to Zulu. You can change all the place identifiers, the aircraft identifiers, and then similarly to iOS as well, there isn't a date index as such, but there is, you can see here on the left-hand side, that if you expand the all entries tab, you get early entries, and in this logbook, early entries 2018, 19, 20, and 21. This can easily be changed. So in this case, it's set to 4 years. If we were to change this to 7 years, for example, 7 years, for example, and then go back to the logbook, then you'll see that all of these have appeared. So we've got all of the entries split up by years, and then we can go further and see the months as well. So with this in mind, we've now got the logbook set exactly how we want it. Everything looks how we want it in the order that we want it. So now it's time to start logging the flights. To show you a few tips and tricks on how to do this quicker, I'm going to pass it to Thomas, and he's going to show you a few of these.
All right, thanks, David. Yeah, let's look at the iPad and look at, now that you've got your field set up the way you want it, let's look at how we can start using some features in LogTen Pro to log easier and faster. So what I really want to highlight here are the default fields in LogTen Pro. As a CFI or as a student, it's very possible that you are flying in and out of the same location. You're maybe flying the same aircraft a lot. There's no reason why you have to fill this data in over and over and over again if you make a new entry. So let's look at some default fields in LogTen Pro. Aircraft, types, places, and even people can be set to default. So if I go to the People tab here, I have me here. I have myself set to This Is Me. This is important to set yourself as This Is Me because this is how it's going to appear on reports with your name at the top of reports. And also it's going to be involved in sharing feature, which we're going to show a little bit further here. I have myself set as a default PIC. For the purposes of this webinar, we'll say I'm an instructor. Let's say I fly the same aircraft over and over again. I can set this aircraft as the default. And now every time I add a new flight, that aircraft will populate in the aircraft ID field. Let's further say that I fly out of Portland. So I can set Portland as my default too. So now just with a few defaults, people, place, aircraft ID, if I go to create a new flight, so I go back to the logbook screen and hit the plus button, and now you can see my aircraft is filled. I've already told my this aircraft existed in my logbook. It already knew it was an aircraft type C-172. I have Portland in there. All I really have to fill in is the destination. We'll say I'm going down to Salem for a quick 0.9 flight. And when I put the total time in, you can see that my autofill times also populated. So PIC I have set to autofill is set to 0.9 there. Dual given, since I'm the instructor, is also populated. You'll see these buttons here that say use 0.9. You can just click that button to populate any other field. Let's say it's cross-country flight. I'm going to tap use 0.9 for cross-country too. It auto-filled me as the PIC crew. Let's put in a student here. Let's say David was the student. Some other features that I have this logbook set up as is the pilot flying feature under duty. You can set your logbook up to populate pilot flying to populate takeoffs and landings. So let's take a look at this. If I have pilot flying, you can see my takeoffs and landings down here have 1 in them. If I deselect pilot flying, you can see my takeoffs and landings are not there anymore. So if I choose pilot flying, you'll see those takeoffs and landings appear again. Let's say that the student did it on this flight. So I do not want to put those in there. So, and then let's say I want to fly back. I can very easily just hit the 3 dots in the upper right, and I can do a return trip. And there, all the same information is there. The aircraft ID, the type, and it swapped the airports for me. So let's go back to the first flight I did, and let's say, let me show you how you can make this even easier now. If you're flying with a student, only one person has to log the flight, because you can now share this flight with your student by clicking the share feature here. Before I do that, let's take it one step further. Let's say I'm the instructor and I want to send this flight to my student and I want to sign this flight for him. Let's say there's something happened on that flight and it required a signature. I can sign this flight. I can put myself in, I can enter my certificate number. I can enter an expiry date. Let's just say it expires next year. I'm going to sign. This flight is now signed. And now I can share this flight with the student and all this data will transfer over. So if I click the 3 dots, see him get this flight in real time, then we can do that real quick.
Yep, ready.
Perfect. So got your screen there. So sorry, my screen here. So we can see if I go to my messages here, you will see that it has come through. It just gives you a link from Thomas. And then if I click on this link, then that will take me straight to LogTen Pro. You will get just a minute disclaimer just before you install the flight. And that disclaimer, just basically what it says is what the data that Thomas has shared contains. So in this case, that contains one aircraft type, which will be the C-172 that Thomas put in there, 2 places, which will be the from and to, 1 flight, which is the one he's sharing with me, 1 aircraft, 2 people, which will be himself and myself. Now, when I click yes here and I add the flight to my logbook, what's going to happen is that my logbook is going to check if any of those items that are being added already exist in my logbook. If they do, fantastic. They will get added to that list. If they do not exist, no problem either. LogTen Pro will create the item for you. So once I click yes, there's nothing else to do. So enough talking, let's see this in action. If I just click the yes button here, you will see that this new flight just appeared, exactly the same data that Thomas shared on the 16th. With it from and to, the total time, I've got it set up to hours and minutes, but that will get converted as well. So it's 54 minutes. You will see here that the signature came through. If I click on it, I can actually see Thomas's signature, his certificate number and expiry date. And then you will notice that the flight is grayed out. Apologies, that the flight is grayed out, so no changes can be made. So this gives the instructor extra peace of mind because they know that once they sign it, that flight will not be modified. If I try to unlock it to make any changes, LogTen Pro will say, there is a signature. If you unlock it, you will lose the signature. So back to the flight, you will see that everything came through. And then the dual given that Thomas had logged has actually swapped to dual received because it is what's relevant to me. You will see that PIC, the instructor, is Thomas, the student is myself. And because Thomas didn't log any landings, obviously someone had to do the landings. So it was me. And then I get to log my day landing and my day takeoff. With the settings that Thomas mentioned in iOS, all of these defaults to make logging easier, all of these are possible on the Mac as well. So let's start with the aircraft, for example. So back to the famous preferences menu. So LogTen Pro preferences. If we go to, actually disregard that. If we go to the aircraft tab, then you will see this aircraft, for example, which is the one we were using. I can use this as my default and I can just click this and then that'll be my default. Similarly, with the aircraft types, I can just choose which one I want to be by default. So let's say this one, that can go as well. With people, let's say that me and Thomas fly together all the time. He's my instructor all the time. So then I can set myself as this is me. And then I can go to Thomas actually and set it to default PIC. So every time I create a new flight, Thomas will be the PIC. If we go back to myself, because I've set this to this is me, we can actually set pay rates. These are probably more relevant to the actual flight instructors. But if you're watching this as a flight instructor, you can set yourself, you can set your pay rates here as necessary. You can even, and this is when we're now going to go to the preferences tab, try to get ahead of the game earlier. You can also set what the total time gets calculated from. So for example, here in Europe, we will be using mainly out and in. But for example, Thomas Heather and Paul might be using hops. So this, you will be able to change it here. And then I'm going to pass this back to Thomas real quick so he can show you this on his iPad.
Yeah, thanks, David. That's a good point. In the US, Hobbs is pretty much used, Hobbs and TAC for students and CFIs. Internationally, out and in are used more often. So these are all definitely adjustable in LogTen Pro, as Heather pointed out at the beginning of this webinar. The other thing I wanted to point out about that share feature, the reason that it knew to swap dual given and dual received is because I had David as a student in this flight, and in David's logbook, he had David himself set as "this is me." So that's another reason why I said before it's important to have the "this is me" set, so that it needs to be that kind of functionality needs to be in place. So not only that, but it has to be exactly right. So you'd have to know that person would have to be entered, not as David M, just as it is in their logbook. For that reason, I might suggest that students and instructors share their "this is me" entries with each other beforehand, before they start flying together or after their first flight. You can share a person by going to the People's tab. If I wanted to share my information with David, I would tap this and I would just share that entry. All these aircraft can be shared individually. I could share that individual aircraft with somebody. All these fields can be shared with each other. So that's another really easy thing for a student and a CFI to collaborate on. Because another thing is the students portion of LogTen Pro, I don't know if we've mentioned this earlier in the webinar, is free to use up to 250 hours. So as a CFI, you can actually recommend to your students to download LogTen Pro. You can use it for a good chunk of your initial training, if not all of it. And up until you hit the 250 hours of total time, it's completely free to use. So as an instructor, you can recommend this to your students without feeling like that you're recommending something that they have to pay on top of their hourly wet fee and stuff like that. So let me just show you some other things real quick. In LogTen Pro, another really great thing for students and CFIs are smart groups, which are really great for tracking goals. And we actually have on our website a blog post, and I think Paul is going to link this. It's at coredyne.com. We have downloadable groups here that you can download into LogTen Pro that will track some goals. You can see here I have, let's go to ATP 500 cross country. If I click on this, you're going to see that it's going to download into LogTen Pro. I'm going to get a message that says, do you want to download this? I'm going to say yes. And now you can see I have this ATP 500 cross country smart group. So the way we have this group set up is that it will appear red right now because it hasn't reached the goal. Once it hits 400, it will turn orange, and then once it hits 500, it'll be green, letting you know that you have now reached your goal for ATP goal of 500 cross-country hours. All of these groups can be downloaded just with a single click. To show you another really good feature, I'm going to pass it over to Heather, who's going to show some reports you can download.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. So I'm really excited to show this to you guys. I don't know that we've actually advertised or mentioned it before, so this is a debut for all of those of you who are joining us here live. Paul's gonna paste a link into our chat that's going to send you to our knowledge base article where you can download, if you want, some Part 61 or 141 custom reports that will show you the various criteria that you need to meet to get your single engine or multi-engine land ratings. And that link, once it is pasted, is going to look like this. It looks like I need to turn airplane mode off. Let's do that again. So the link was going to take you here, FAA Part 61 and 141 requirement reports. Now, these are custom reports, so you will need to install them if you do want to use them. And the way that that works, let's say we're going to do the Part 61 airplane single engine ratings. If I tap on that, it will take me to this page where it will say the template is available to install. Further tapping on that install link will prompt me to open it in LogTen. It asks me the question if I want to add the report, so I'll say import. And if you haven't already installed a custom report, you can find them quite easily here in the Reports tab. And now you can see in the left-hand column options, at the very bottom, you have a My Reports option. If I tap on that, and I can configure report, and I want to generate for all of them, you can see now really quickly all the requirements are listed, and then there's check marks for requirements that you've satisfied. There's asterisks for requirements that can't be automatically evaluated, so you'll just have to manually evaluate those. And then if there's any requirements that you haven't satisfied, it'll show up as a red X. While I have these tabs available here, I did just want to show really quickly, you can configure these tabs along the bottom for quick reference as well. So I'm going to hide these and go back to More. In this generic More menu, the Edit button, if you tap on that, you can see all of the icons that are available for you to choose from. The ones that are grayed out along the top rows are ones that are already in use. And then the blue icons beneath those are ones that are available. So let's say if instead of places, we wanted to see people, as instructors we're busy and helping out a lot of students, we want to be able to have that as a quick reference. I'm going to tap and drag people down to places, and it's going to automatically replace that. Maybe I wanted it a different order. You can just tap and drag to put people wherever you like. And when you're done, you tap on the Done button, and it will remain there.
That's a good segue to potentially answer that question around search of students, because our Eng team is working on an advanced search now. It's not available yet, but I wondered, Heather, whether that having that People's tab down there is quite beneficial in terms of you can just click through there and quite quickly find. You can have your students as favorites, or you can quite quickly find the people you're looking for.
Yeah. So I'm sorry if I blazed through that really quickly. Let's pretend like we're in aircraft and we want to do a quick people search. If you tap and drag down, you'll get a search bar. And let's say I want to search for a student. I tap in their name. It's going to start showing up here for the person that you're looking for, whatever you type in, and then it'll show the breakdown for the different flights that this student has been involved in.
Great.
Is that what you meant, Paul?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, because there was one question around the search that when they search for crew, they can't, and they've put a student in as crew, they can't find them. They're not finding them, and this is a kind of alternate way to do that.
Correct. And then there's an option too within these details. It says 39 flights as aux crew. So if you tap on that, then it'll show the list of flights that student is involved in.
Yeah, I guess that's what is being, or one of the questions he's saying when, or she is saying, when I go to this search people search, my students are showing up as aux crew.
Yeah, we're working on improvements to our search fields. So I think anything other than PIC or SIC will be depicted as aux crew here, but that will be updated.
Great. And I think we had another question just around the KCFO change from KFTG to KCFO.
I was set up to show that if you wanted to. I think I'm set up to check that one.
Yeah, I'll
show that one real quick.
I'll share your. I'll share you. Here you go. Okay.
Yeah. So there is a lot of keeping up with all the airport changes is something that we do constantly, and when an airport changes it, we do get notes, we do update our system. I don't think this one has been updated yet, but let me show you how easy it is to just do that in LogTen Pro. So it looks like this was a situation where the airport changed the identifier. So this is the old identifier, is what they were saying, and it's been changed to CFO. You can easily just change that without waiting for the update by just typing in the new identifier here. And then that will change throughout your logbook.
Yeah, so that's a good point in terms of it'll change everything in your logbook that had the previous identifier.
Yeah.
So Kent, my comment was that if you wanted to maintain that identifier for historic flights, which I don't think you probably would, but you could by creating a new.
You could.
Place.
You could definitely just add a new place, and then you could put in your new identifier, and you could fill in all the fields that you wanted. And so then that would leave you with 2 identifiers if you did want to keep the old identifier for previous flights, for sure.
We also had a question from Bergen Hugos regarding LogTen. Yes, our LogTen's free up to 250 hours, and it does cover all platforms. So you can get Mac and iOS. And then we had a question around, so, yes, please get both, use both. This is the marketing guy talking now. And then we had a question around sync, just around syncing Mac and iPhone. I don't know if we want to, Thomas, you're on screen right now. I don't know if you want to just show the sync part of in settings and just the choices that are there.
Sure. If you go to the more settings, and then the sync functionality can be found here in sync. This device is already set up to sync via iCloud, but you can change that to sync via Wi-Fi. You can just turn all sync off altogether for none. If I did that, it'll say disable iCloud, and then you'd say yes. And this disabling iCloud doesn't change any data that's currently on your device. It just says I don't want to sync via iCloud anymore. So This is where you would change all that.
Great, and then just to say one note with that is you got to make sure that you're on the same Apple ID on both on the devices in order for that sync to work, because it does work through your iCloud account, your Apple iCloud account.
Exactly.
Then,
so
go ahead.
iCloud is your Apple ID. So the Apple ID is the important account here when you're iCloud syncing. So that all your devices will have to be on the same Apple ID. And just another note, backup while I'm in the screen is right here, and you can also back up to iCloud just by hitting a button at the top right, and that is separate from sync. So sync is real-time data that syncs back and forth. This backup is actually stagnant, and you can choose not to sync. You can choose to sync via Wi-Fi, but this backup will always be in your iCloud drive associated with your Apple ID. If you were to lose your device, you could go to the store, get another device, log into the Apple ID, and these backups, all these backups will still be there. In addition to that, you can even email the backups to yourself by sliding to the right and then sharing them, and then you would have the option here to mail it to yourself, and it would come as an email attachment. So backup and sync, while they both use iCloud, they are separate from each other, and backup is secure and will not go away. Sync can be turned on and off at any time.
Yeah, that's great. We also have Dropbox backup, which I don't think you have set up on this iPad, but
right.
It's definitely
if my iPad was set up to a Dropbox account, you'll see here, if I select Dropbox, I now have the option. Oh, I am set up to it. I didn't know this device was set up to Dropbox. You can see now by clicking these sliders at the top, I can show both backup services. I can choose to back up to iCloud or Dropbox, and it works exactly the same way for each one. So if I created a Dropbox, now that backup is in Dropbox. And I also have backups in iCloud.
Great. I mean, we definitely highly recommend you're backing up on a regular basis using the iCloud or Dropbox functionality on this. The other thing to note is that all of your data is contained on the device. So if you have multiple devices, then that would also be a backup on top of it. So if you have Mac and iPhone and iPad, then all three of those devices will contain your full logbook. So we have a few questions here. I'm hoping we can kind of jump through them. Maybe we can, I don't know, jump in, whoever else wants to answer questions from the team. But we've got one here around multi-category showing single engine, but not multi-engine. He's tried to create a multi-engine category, but it's not working. Anybody can, take us through the single engine versus multi and how to set that up?
I'll take that if you want, Paul.
All right, on. Okay. Fire away, David. You're on.
Perfect. So the main thing with aircraft types, and this will be, I'm currently showing it on my Mac, but we can get Heather and Thomas to very quickly show what this would look like on your iPad or your iPhone. But it is very, very similar, and the principle is exactly the same. These types, when you add a type here, two things can happen. Number one, if the aircraft's in the database, everything will autofill. So let's say that we wanted to create a DA20, a Diamond 20. So the code for that would be DV20. So if we enter DV20, we'll see that comes up as a suggestion. And then once I click enter, everything is here. Now, if that's not on the database, you can obviously manually enter each of the fields. Why is this important? Because each and every one of these fields is what LogTen Pro uses to know whether that aircraft, is an airplane, is a simulator, what engine type it has, and for this question in hand, the type of engine it has. So if I change this DA20 here, and I manually change it to multi-engine land, and I generate a report, any hours on this DA20 will actually show up as multi-engine, even though it only has one engine, because I've just told the app this has two engines or more. So in this case, so that your hours actually show up as multi-engine, I would first of all go into the types tab, which is up here on your Mac, but it'll be at the bottom on your iOS devices, and then check that it is set to something, and that if it is set to something, it is definitely set to either multi or single engine.
Yeah, and I think that's a good important point. That I'm not sure if the question was, they said that they tried to set up a multi-category. So I'm wondering if maybe they tried to set up a custom time field, but definitely multi-engine and single engine in LogTen Pro is designated by the type in the types tab. So that would be the place that you would have to do it.
Yeah, there is definitely a field that tracks and you can make it visible. We can do this here live now. That will track your multi-engine hours, but those hours will obviously be dependent on, the aircraft being set up as being multi-engine or single engine. So if we go to the Logbook tab and then go to LogTen Pro, Preferences, in this case, it'll be in the time field. And then I can go to the advanced fields here, and you'll see that you can track time by engine type, engine aircraft category, or aircraft class. So if we say, for example, multi-engine land, and then let's just get this out of the way. This will be here at the end, and each flight that has been flown with an aircraft that has been set up as multi-engine will automatically populate this column, and you'll get a nice total here at the bottom.
Can you show? Sorry, I was just answering one question. Did you show how to add the multi-engine column in there?
Yeah. I'll bring it up again. Just LogTen Pro here, and then Preferences, and then if we go to the Time tab, initially you'll land in the Standard tab, but if you click on the Advanced tab, then you will see all of these times here. So there's loads of them, so feel free to have a look through them and then make visible or invisible as many as you wish. Obviously, as we've already mentioned, once this is here, we can move this across wherever is relevant for us.
Great, thanks. I'm just looking down here at the questions. Make sure we cover everybody off. Oh yeah, we had a question from Anna. Thanks for the question, Anna. Hourly rate is filled in. In general, I set up total time for plus 0.2 for briefing. Where can I then see my total earnings? Can somebody have the ability to just kind of show that earnings section and column? And it'd probably be good to show it on iOS and Mac, maybe. Who wants to take that?
I could take it.
Okay.
So let's say you're an instructor and you want to track an hourly flight rate. So actually on iOS, you go to Settings, My Logbook, and you have your different pay rate fields here. So flight rate pay, let's just say 20. So, and you can see it defaulted to a $sign. That's because I have my iOS device set to language and my device language and region settings. It's going to be specific to what you have set. So me being in the US, it's set to dollars here. So now let's add a flight.
Thomas, I was just wondering, jumping in there, I'm not sure if Anna has set it up already, but just showing the ability to have kind of briefing time added for the duty in the duty section.
Oh yeah, so if you have, you can also set up a duty pay rate, and that might be
maybe throw a number in there for the duty pay rate as well. I mean, it might be that you use that if you're including briefing time in your.
Yeah, so maybe you're not just using flight rate. Maybe you want to include your entire duty. So let's just say for the let's just say flight pay. Let's leave that at 20, and let's just say duty rate is going to be, I don't know, 15. And then if you were to do this, you could add a new entry. So I'm going to add a new entry. And I'm going to configure my fields to show these new duty pay rates and everything that I populated. So I'm going to show my duty rate. I'm going to show my flight rate. I'm going to show my total earnings here. And if I'm going to be logging duty, of course, I need to do on duty, off duty. So now we have the fields we want. So let's say we did a flight and the flight was 1 hour. But then we also did some, let's just say we did 30 minutes of coursework. Let's say we did it from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. And the on duty, off duty, total duty. Let's look at total duty here too. So well, I'm sorry, I'd have to come back to that. That should, doing it live, people.
Maybe I uncovered a little bug that we need to sort out there. I've definitely done that. I've used this previously, and it worked absolutely foolproof. So we'll have to have a look at that. And certainly, Anna, please reach out to our support team. I'm just going to throw the support line up here as well for people. Actually, so from your device, you can either email us at support@coradine.com, or on your device, if it's iOS, you go more and then help, then contact support. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us, and we can work through any of those situations with you. There are quite a few more questions here, which I'd like to get to. Yeah, so we have one around types. So TBM7 is showing as a single engine and type, but then when I look under multi in the radar, it shows the TBM and 172 as being planes flown. Any advice on that one? Does that sound like a reach out to support one, or is that?
I could definitely address that.
Okay, I'll add you to the stream. Thanks.
Awesome. So without knowing exactly where you're looking in the radar tab under multi, you do have smart groups here from the analyze section on the left-hand side. If that's a custom smart group for multi that you created, I would look into the settings for that, and I'll demonstrate an example for setting up a group to display all multi-hours. If it's on the right-hand side that you're looking, there is a summary for any of the groups that you select that breaks down total instrument, turbine, multi-engine land, single engine land. So a couple of quick things to check. The first thing that I would suggest is to go into your types tab. I did a quick search for this Tango Bravo Mike 7 type of airplane. It did come up from our database as a single engine land. So what I'm hearing is you want to see multi-engine hours, and you're seeing single engine hours and planes in the list as well. If I were to set up my own smart group to look for engine type class is multi-engine land, I would start by going to the radar and tapping on the plus button, selecting a new smart group. We can title it multi for reference. And then we can leave most of the criteria blank except for just one that we want to see. Category, air type, class is or begins with, and we can type in multi if you want to distinguish between land or sea. You can do that here as well. So now we've got our group set up, and it's going to display as total time. So now if I select this group, it's only showing me planes that are already classified in my types tab as multi-engine land type planes. So again, getting back to your question, to summarize, the first two things that I would check would be in the types tab that all of your types are configured correctly to show class, the appropriate class, and then maybe double check the criteria settings within your smart group if that's what you're looking at, to make sure that it's only pulling entries with that particular criteria. And I'll leave that criteria up again as well if you wanted to take a quick look at that.
Thanks, Heather.
Paul, if you want to flash my screen again, the earnings is working now. I just wanted to show it real quick.
Sure.
So here's a 2-hour flight. And then if we wanted to put some duty time in there as well, you can see that I now have a total earnings of $55 because I have 2 hours at the flight rate, and then I have 1 hour logged at the $15 duty rate. So now my total earnings is $55.
And Thomas, can you just go just show once more the kind of configure fields and how you find that? Because I think that might be Anna's thing, and she just needs to, if she's already put in the rates and everything in settings, she might just be looking for, okay, how do I add that field?
Yeah, so the field is in configure fields, and it is under the duty section here. And then you have to configure the fields under your duty, and then you'll see total earnings. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that putting in flight rates is not going to go back and calculate any of your existing entries. This will only work going forward. Obviously, if your pay rates change, you wouldn't want to see your total earnings changed for flights for things that you logged a year ago. So when you go in and add like a flight pay rate or a duty pay rate, that only applies to flights from that point forward to new flights. So your existing flights will not show a total earnings when you do that. So that might be part of the confusion too.
Thanks, Thomas. Just trying to go through these in order of how they came in. And obviously, as I was saying, please, if you have additional questions or we don't get to your question or we don't answer it sufficiently, our support team is fantastic and would definitely be ready to answer any and all questions you have. Just contact us at support@coredyne.com. So let me run through this. I've got one from Erki Uzanali. Hi guys, when I enter my flight details as pilot flying on my iPhone, and every time I sync with my iPad, I have to physically select the PF button again. Any ideas as to why that might be happening? Anyone?
So if they're saying that they have pilot flying selected, are they saying that they have to turn pilot flying on their other device? Because I don't know if we mentioned this, but the way you have your devices configured is distinct to your device. So if you have pilot flying showing on an iPhone to display, but it's not shown on your iPad, when you sync those devices, the configure fields isn't going to change. That is not something that syncs. So maybe that is what they were saying. However, the data should sync. And so if they did have pilot flying checked on one device, the data as pilot flying should transfer to both devices regardless of whether pilot flying is selected or not.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like they are finding it not syncing quite correctly. So I'd suggest, Erki, that you, I don't know if that's your first name, so I've been saying everybody's full name. Uzanali, if you'd like to reach out to support, I'm sure we can help you with that. Support@coredyne.com, or from your device, just tap more help, contact support. Okay, next question on here I've got is, again, is from Anna again. If an aircraft changes from operator, i.e. in 2018, GCABC was from operator A, and in 2019 it changed to operator B, will flights from 2018 show operator B? And I guess if you're, I don't know if anybody has the aircraft tab open or could open the aircraft tab.
I do.
I think, Heather, I got you there. Okay.
So, Anna, my suggestion for this, because the operator designator is attached to the particular aircraft record, if you change it from operator A to operator B, it will change that information for all entries. If you wanted to distinguish between flights flown with different operators, my suggestion would then be to create two separate entries for that aircraft, and then you can add your own designation to them. For example, you can do a -A and a -B. That might make it really clear and easy just at a glance, and then you can create groups to filter out that information. But yeah, any data that you change that's related to the aircraft on this level will be affecting all of the information where that aircraft is present.
So basically you'd have to, Anna, you'd have to create a separate aircraft, hit the plus button here in the aircraft tabs, create a separate aircraft that has a kind of GCABC-A and GCABC-B, and then choose the appropriate one for the appropriate operator hopefully that helps. And that way you can actually search as well, as Heather was saying, on that criteria. Okay.
Heather, can you maybe show how you got operator show under aircraft ID there?
It was tricky. I had to, so it wasn't available by default. I tapped on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, which is sort of the actions button. It tells you what's available. There's a configure fields option available for types, people, aircraft. And if we select that, we can now see at the bottom of the section, we have configure section, and then there's a bunch of fields that are available to enable or make visible or hidden based off of what you want to see. So operator I found here. You can also enable things such as the Hobbs field, which I know is very useful for students and CFIs. And then we're going to tap done. Let's say I want to move operator down to the bottom. Hobbs is where I would like it. And then now that field is available to choose from.
Yeah, I like how there's so many fields in the aircraft tab that you could choose from. There's tail wheel toggle buttons that you can choose. There's high performance. You could put physical notes in there, passenger capacity. I mean, there's just so many fields possible to display that there's only just a few that are default, but there's all sorts of fields that you can display for aircraft.
Including your own custom fields. So I just wanted to clarify for David Moore talking about sync and where the data is held. What I wanted to say, because I think I might have confused things, is that all your devices have a backup of your logbook on the device, i.e. they contain all the data on that device. But in terms of sync, like if you make an entry on your iMac, as long as you have iCloud Sync on, or that you sync with Wi-Fi between your iMac and your MacBook Pro, which is the example you gave, David, that will sync all the data between those devices. So whatever the newest update to a flight or new flight, whatever device a new flight was added on, that will automatically sync up with your on all of your devices. And then and that's where on each of the devices they would hold the data that synced data on each of the devices as well. So you're always going to have the correct data on all your devices when you sync.
Paul, would I be able to make a quick clarification?
Sure, of course.
You mentioned that each of your devices stores backups, and I just wanted to clarify that the data within LogTen Pro is stored locally on your iOS devices, and then it's stored in a background container folder on Macs. I wouldn't necessarily call it a backup because it is dynamic, meaning any change that's made to your logbook will affect that copy of your data that's stored locally. So it's not necessarily a static backup that you'd be able to restore from if for any reason something happened to your logbook or if an unintentional change was made. For that purpose, you'd want to actually make a physical manual backup via this backup option on Mac and iOS, so that you could revert back to a version if you need to.
Great, thanks for the clarification, Heather. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a question from Jordan here, and please, if I've missed any questions, there's been quite a few. Feel free, if you've already asked a question earlier that I haven't gotten to, throw it back in the chat. In terms, I'm just going to bring up Jordan's question here. Is there a possibility to mass edit flights? For example, all flights where I'm a student, to switch me over to SIC as well, or to include SIC, and that is available on the Mac. Maybe, I don't know, David, I got you there. Are you able to just show how that happens?
Certainly. Yep. So as Paul said, this is only available on the Mac, and then basically what you would want to do is select the flights, that you want to make all the changes to. So let's say I wanted all the flights from the 25th of February all the way to, I don't know, the 7th of December last year to be, as you're saying, SIC as well as student. So then if I select the first one, which I've done here at the top, and then scroll down to the other one that I want, and then hold the shift key, then I can click on this one, which will select all of these flights. You can see that all of these are now blue as selected. And then if I go here to the right-hand side, I can just type my name. In this case, it'll be your own name, Jordan, but you can, for this example, I'm going to use my own. So I can just use David, press enter, and then you will see here that all of these flights have now David as SIC. Now, we've done this for SIC, but it is possible to do this for PIC. It is possible to do this for to change the aircraft ID in badge for all of the flights, or even to add a note. Imagine that you've finished your training and you want all of your flights to have a "this is training" remark. So you could select all of the flights and then go to the remarks and then write a little note, and then that would get added to all of your flights as well.
Great, thanks, David.
And then you could also sort the column. So in Jordan's case, if he only wanted to do that for flights where he was student, he could sort the student column, and then that would allow him to highlight all the flights where he's a student, because it might not just be within a date range. So you can also do that on the Mac, where you can sort the columns accordingly.
You're very right, Thomas. You could. There's two options that you can do. You can, number one, as Thomas was saying, you can sort the student column, which is just, you would just click at the top of a column, and that would sort all of these alphabetically. So in this case, I would just scroll down to all of the flights where I am a student, and then I could select these and then add it, batch edit it like we've shown. You could also create a smart group that filters by the student name being your own. And then after that, once you've got the flights that you want to modify, then the process is exactly the same. You would just need to select the flights with a shift key and then make the changes that's necessary.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay. Wow, great questions. Thank you so much for all your questions, everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us. I'll give it a minute or so more. We're well over our time, but I think most of this has been answering questions. I hope it's really helpful. I'm going to throw up again our. I should stop saying throw up.
You said it.
Seriously, I'm feeling fine. Don't worry. So you can contact us, support.coradine.com or support@coradine.com. Actually, David, you're on here. You could just show the help menu for LogTen. So at the top, right at the top, you get your your help, and then contact support. And this is a great way to share your logbook with us if you have an issue. It'd be fantastic. Oh, we have another one here. Yeah, filtering. Okay, great. Is there a way to delete smart groups without losing data? I mean, who wants to take that question?
I can take it.
Okay, Heather, here you go. You're in the stream.
Wonderful. So you can absolutely delete smart groups, currencies, limits. It will not delete any data. Really, these groups are just filters and different ways for slicing and dicing and looking at the different aspects of your logbook information. So this multi-group that I created earlier, if I swipe to the left, it gives me the option to delete. Say I don't want it anymore. The group goes away, but the information is all still there. And I hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks. I'm going to suggest David, that you get in touch with us. Let's just dive in a little bit deeper as to what you've backed up, where you've backed up, and make sure that we've got your data all covered. So, please contact us at support@coradine.com or directly through your device. One other useful note for anyone who has contacted us, our support team, and sent their logbook in. We try to, and we can't guarantee it, but we try to maintain those support threads. So we tend to have a lot of data kind of in that support queue as well. Please, Heather or Thomas or David, jump in and tell me no. But I'm just saying it's not a guarantee, but it's definitely something else that is there. And I would definitely say, David, that when you contact us, do it through LogTen, tap the more settings, more help, contact support, and we can help you out and make sure everything's backed up the way it should be. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for all your questions. I'll just put us on, and again, please, I'm going to put that back up, the banner. Please contact us if you have any other questions. I'm going to throw us back onto no more devices. That's it. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll give everybody a chance to say, well, I don't know, are we going to wave, guys? We didn't do it, kind of like, what are we doing at the end?
Sure, we'll wave. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.